get out early. So I'm Angie Bush. I'm the Director of Radiology at University of Texas Medical Branch. It's a small, medium-sized system in south of Houston in Texas. And a little bit about myself. I'm a U.S. Air Force trained X-ray tech. That's how I'm being an X-ray tech. Spent 6 years in the Air Force, honorary discharge, started my civilian career, and I literally worked myself up from the front line. Pushing a portable, doing X-ray on the third shift on the weekend. First job I could find, I took it, ran with it, stayed with it for several years. Then learned CT, then learned MRI, fell in love with MRI, stayed there for a number of years, and then this bug called leadership caught me. I had told myself when I got out of the military, I'll do anything but be in charge. No, left so the staff sergeant didn't want to have control over anything, but just wear my PJs to work and push a portable. That's all I wanted to do. Shortly, didn't take more than maybe a year in the civilian sector. I said, okay, maybe a little bit of responsibility, just this much, and this much grew to this much, which grew to this much, and now I'm the director of imaging for the University of Texas system. So that's a little bit about me, and let me ask you, when you saw this in your portfolio, what word jumped out at you? Morale, margarita. Carrie, let's be honest, that word fart jumped out at you, right? Who the heck in a professional conference writes the word fart? Go ahead and say it. You know you want to say it. Just say it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Fart. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Fart. My husband, I said this to my husband, Kurt Bush, sitting right here. I said, what do you think about this? When I send this in, this is what I'm thinking about my intro. He laughed so hard, he said, this is not my wife. My wife would not write this. Not my professional wife. She wrote the word fart. I said, well, it's kind of what this whole last year kind of feels like. It's just the fart that keeps giving and giving and giving. So we're going to be talking about morale post-COVID. All right? So what is morale? Okay, first of all, I'm going to apologize to you right now. Literally, these are the most words I have said in a single run for about 8 days. I have not had my voice for 8 days. I've saved my voice. All the words I would have said during the day came out as cough between the hours of 8 and 2 a.m. for my husband to hear. So that has been our week for the last week. So this is the most run. So if I start coughing, please forgive me. I've got my water handy, and I will be chugging it throughout the conference or throughout the next 9 minutes. So we're talking morale. What is morale? So morale is how our employees feel, how they feel about coming to work. It's their attitude about the direction our company is going. So here we are, COVID. So what is COVID? It started as a virus, way over there in China, right? It's horrible, so sad, so devastating over there in China. Then, what? I can't be close to my friends. Now you're affecting me a little bit. Now you're saying I can't see my loved one? I've got to not see my mother, Mama Maria? I've got to worry about that? It's not really real, right? Oh, yeah, got real really quick, didn't it? Hey, can't open. Now you can't have people coming into your store. Then it got really, really real. People out of the job, being let go because they can't open my doors. Then it got really, really real when we couldn't find toilet paper to wipe our butts. Okay? This is like unprecedented, right? You just went from something that was going over to China, and now I got to figure out how I'm going to wipe my butt. Okay? And yes, I did say that twice for the recording, just so you know that. All right. Now, those of us who are fortunate to still have jobs, let's make our jobs really uncomfortable. Let's put you in PPE, PPE to the 10th degree. Okay, I was in the military. We did exercises once a year when you had to put on your whole chemical warfare. And I say play because I was in the Air Force. I played military once a year in chemical warfare out in the sun, trying to do healthcare. But guess what? I can still get out of play mode and take it off. Here, we're having our employees go into they didn't sign up for military. This is civilian. And we're telling them to come to work, you have to wear all this. I mean, I've heard of people having, and I'm sure you guys see them. They have permanent ridges on their noses, you know, indents from the face shields all over the face. I have my daughter. She's not even healthcare. She's a children's minister in the Woodlands. And from keeping her PPE on, she's got face breakout all around her mouth. This is the real life, right? And then, say we don't have that. What can make anything even worse? Complaining that it's leaving acne on my face because I'm having to wear it all the time. Well, guess what? You got to go work with these patients and you don't have the right PPE, right? So let's talk about morale. How do you feel during this episode or even after? And what do you think the attitude about coming to work or the direction the company is going through the layoffs, through the assignments, through the PPE or the lack of PPE? It is devastating. It's a part that just keeps going and going and going. And here, a year later, here we are, and it still keeps giving us just blessing after blessing after blessing, right? So when we talk about morale during all of this time, now I can't read because I actually have to look at the notes now. And why talking about morale post-COVID from someone who works at UTMB, and why I think it's also relevant, is that what you're seeing up here is the University of Texas is the absolute first medical school in Texas. The first medical school. That building in the top left, right corner there is what we call Old Red. The reason we call it Old Red, and that's why I put it on the left, is because of the color of the materials it's made out of. It is actually registered as a historical site because it's still the oldest standing medical school, building-wise, in the state of Texas. Now, it earned its landmark status by surviving also, not just as being the first, but it survived the 1900 storm in Galveston. And don't worry, I'll tell you about the 1900 storm in Galveston. But at that time, and over the past 130 years, over 25,000 degrees, educational degrees have been given, handed out. Oh, that's even better. So where we are today, what you're seeing here is what we look like today. Today consists of 6 hospitals, 4 schools with 2,500 students and residents. On the top is a state-of-the-art research facility. We have affiliations with the Shriner-Burns. Can you say there's a mark in here? Yeah. We're affiliated with Shriner-Burns Hospital here. This is our main hospital in Galveston. And we have one of the only non-military research labs. When COVID first came out and all the research was being developed in preparation for the vaccines, they didn't do the vaccine testing there, but they were testing the results of what happened to the patients that got COVID. Galveston Lab is one of the handful of non-military labs that actually got the samples. So let me tell you right now, if anything was ever to happen about a mass outbreak of a virus, Galveston campus has a sample of that virus. I can tell you that right now. It's kind of scary to know that the building that's right next to me has all of this going on in it, but it's also kind of exciting because this campus, one of the first medical schools in the state of Texas, has developed that, we'll call it resilience, Miss Brenda, and learning how to adapt to major change or major disasters. And they've actually made it part of their educational mantra and educational mission. So geographically, we're spread out about 30 to 50 miles. What you see here are the different hospitals, the different There's actually 3 hospitals here, 4, 5, 6. And then the circles represent our urgent cares, and then there's a bunch of little clinics out and about from there. So where does morale come into play here? And especially speaking from someone who's from the University of Texas in Galveston. September 8th, 1900 is the Great Galveston Hurricane. Had winds of 130 or 140 miles per hour, and a storm surge of 15 feet. 8,000 people died in that one city. 8,000 people. 3,600 buildings destroyed. And the damage was estimated to be 20 million at the time. In today's currency, $700 million in damage. In one city, guys, this is not, the whole southern shore. In one city. To this day, that 1900 storm remains the deadliest natural disaster in the nation's history. To today. Guess what? Old Red is still there. Old Red survived that 1900 storm. It bent, but it didn't break. But you say 1900, okay, that's a lot of generations between there and here, come on. A lot of time. Let's go to Ike more recently. September 13th, 2008. I took a very similar pattern as the 1900 storm. Had storm surges of 10 to 15 feet. There were only 13 fatalities in Galveston. 13. As devastating as it is, because it's fresh in our memory. 13. If you look at these images, oops, go back. Right here on the causeway on the top left, this is the southbound lane. This sign right here says Texas City. Taking that exit goes to one of my favorite pizza places. Notice all the traffic is on the northbound lane. Can't even get on the southbound lane. But literally is one exit from my house. The storm surges coming up, and yes, the houses are on stilts. Doesn't matter. They were so high they came up into the houses. This is a picture of one of the canals in my neighborhood in Tiki Island. There are no stairwells to go up into that house. The stairs have been completely taken out. And look at the cemetery. This is a cemetery on Galveston, where caskets have been raised to the surface. Your loved ones, our loved ones, literally raised up. And a monument to commemorate the 1900 storm, and here's another storm right behind it. Very similar pattern. But Big Red is still standing. So this is why I think that this is a very not only a relevant topic, but speaking it from the point of view of someone who works at this campus, at the University of Texas Medical Branch, who's been through these storms. How do you survive it? When you talk about morale, you will go, if you come to Galveston today, almost every business on the seawall will have some kind of placard that shows you exactly where the water line. They wear like a badge of honor. I survived this. I went through this. I stood here, and I am still here today. I was bent. I was not broken. You cannot drown me. Now, years later, people come to the site and they look for the water line. My mother-in-law came and visited us not too long ago, and there's a little pub. Surprise, surprise, I was at a pub. And both of us are only 5'1", and the water line was above our head. In other words, if I was standing in this building during the storm surge, I would be underwater. That's how high it was. But to stand there and just to feel what it felt like. But these bar owners, they'll come out and they'll tell you all about what they went through and how they survived it and how they're doing today. And that's what we're here to talk about. UTMB, just when I was doing some searching in preparation for this, UTMB actually 1 week after Ike, 1 week, they opened 4 clinics on the mainland because we still had a mission to do. The storm was gone. It's time to pick up the pieces and move on. So how do Galvestonians move on? You don't know how we survived the storms in the first place. You know, a little tidbit about Angie. First time I ever met my husband, I didn't even remember the situation. He told me about it years later. First time I ever met him, I was running into a bar right before I spoke, asking for a shot of Jameson. I was speaking. I was doing an intro. That's speaking. You have a mic on you. That's speaking, right? So, in true Galvestonian style, we heard of hurricane parties. They know how to do it. Let me just tell you, they know how to do it. You can't control what you can't control. All you can do is pick up the pieces afterwards. And if anyone has developed that type of resilience, it's the Galvestonians. They know what they can control, they know what they can't. And you know what? I will figure it out afterwards, one way or another. So where does this have to do with morale post-COVID? One of the keys is a margarita. Ooh. And I really did want to bring y'all margaritas, just saying. Just forgot, sorry. But I promise I'll let you out early so you go get one. So why margarita? There are 5 essential elements in a margarita. And I believe it's these same 5 essential elements that make a good morale, especially post-crisis. So, communication. In a margarita, 7 parts is tequila. The main ingredient, communication. 4 parts, adaptiveness and nimbleness. Can't have a margarita without Cointreau. 3 parts, celebrating milestones. That's your lime juice. Joy and bonding, that's the salt on the rim. And then rest. Rest when you can. That's the language on the side. So, honestly, this is how you make a margarita. So you didn't know you were going to bartending class today, right? You thought you were learning about imaging. You thought you were learning about morale. I'm going to teach you how to make a really great margarita. So the ratio is 7-4-3. 50% tequila, 29 Cointreau, 21% fresh lime juice. If you put this into a morale, it's communication, it's adaptiveness, it's nimbleness, celebrating the milestones, finding joy in what you do, or finding joy in something you do, bonding, and rest. So, history of a margarita. I told you it was going to be a bartending class too. History of margarita. There's a couple. First of all, when the margarita was invented, there was no Facebook, there was no internet, so no one can really say who, stake in the ground, boom, made the margarita first. But there are 2 stories of the many that really kind of stand out there. I'm going to share 2 of them with you. First one is Carlos Danny Herrera. He was at a Tijuana restaurant in Rancho La Gloria in 1938, and he said he made this for an actress, Marjorie King. What he said was that he had this actress that would come in, and the only thing she could drink was tequila. But she was very, very prissy. She needed something to make it a little softer, a little bit more palatable. So he came up with this just for her. Now, the more popular story is Margarita Summit. That's her name, Margarita Summit. And she was a Dallas socialite, of course. She was at her house in 1948, and she had some really highfalutin people who would come and visit her. One of them was Tommy Hilton, the owner of the Hilton hotel chain. So he came over, and she made this. She made a summer concoction for her guests. And Tommy Hilton loved it so much, he put it in all of his hotel chains. And so she says she made the margarita, because of course it also matches her name, so why wouldn't it make sense, right? And all this can be looked up on Smithsonian Magazine. They talk about bartending. But what was really interesting when you're doing this research is why did, in both stories, the similarity is this. They wanted to make the tequila, the hard stuff, palatable. Well, isn't that what communication is supposed to do? It's how to make that hard stuff palatable, how to deliver a message that maybe not everyone wants to hear. So that's why we're going to talk about communication first and how we make it palatable for morale, especially post-COVID. And for the sake of this purpose, or this talk, we're going to break up communication into 3 stages. Early COVID, well, that's over in China. It's not really real yet. Peak COVID, oh, this stuff is real right now. And then in the part that we have today, right, that we're still Carrie, I just want to tell you, I love you for sitting there. No one gets it. And for the purpose of recording, yes, Carrie is farting all over our intercom today. Yes, Carrie, everyone's going to hear that. Carrie Styles farted. There you go. So early COVID. So this is talk. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit of this. So believe it or not, thinking back where we are today, it was January last year. The first death, January 11th, the first death of COVID in China. January 31, 20 days late, 31. That's January 31. 20 days later, Trump restricts travel from China. Okay, well, I'm not going to China. It doesn't affect me, right? Around this time, well, actually, it was earlier than this last year, February 10th and 12th, we were at ICE. We were at ICE. And you know what? I didn't even know what COVID was at that time. Honestly, was anyone here at the February ICE last year? Were we even talking about COVID then? But it was already happening, right? February 21st, the first non-imported case happened was tracked in the U.S. February 29th, the first death in the U.S. actually occurred. Okay, all right, but it wasn't in Galveston. It wasn't in Galveston, still not real yet. Okay, but it's still over there somewhere. March 1st, Houston Rodeo opened. So I'm from Houston, like I said, Galveston, Texas. And let me tell you, we live and plan our cycles around the rodeo. The rodeo is an iconic annual event. And everybody, even in the medical center where Carrie works, people who work in the medical center, they know when to stay away from certain streets. Don't even try to go down there. They plan their shopping, their family visits around the rodeo because it's just so congested. Hey, it opened. It's still not real. I bet. What concert did we see? Chris Young. We were there. Saying, woohoo, that COVID's over there. It's not here. Literally, the night we got back. This is 3-3, 3-4. The first case in Houston is recorded, and guess where they found it? Houston Rodeo. Things got real very, very quickly. So on 3-4, guess when we had our first imaging leadership meeting about COVID? Was when things got real on 3-4, not back in January. Then it cascaded very quickly, but this is still considered early COVID. The Austin South by Southwest was canceled on 3-5, March 5th, just 2 days later. Then on 3-7, March 7th, the cruise ships, passengers, there were several cruise ship passengers exposed to COVID, and they were quarantined in Houston. So we have in Galveston, we're one of the big ports for cruise ships. Then I'll several from there myself. It's also a huge economical, source of economy for the city. So now passengers are being quarantined. 3-8, the man tests positive after. This is the rodeo. The rodeo shuts down on 3-11. Rodeo shuts down. Now in green, this is when it starts to get real for UTMB here. Okay, so we've got the rodeo open, rodeo's closed, South by Southwest is closed, we've got cruise ship passengers being quarantined in Houston. Something is real here. Maybe we should pay attention now. So on March 11th, was our first hospital planning meeting. What will we do if it gets more real? What will we do if? 3-12, okay, maybe I should have an imaging leadership meeting now. What are we going to do with imaging? What's going to be our plan if it really starts getting real? And then 1 day later on 3-13. So 3-13, between 3-12 and 3-13, that's when, from an imaging perspective, at our hospital, things got real. We immediately started going to 2-a-day calls. Our communication up to this point has been, hey guys, wash your hands, make sure you clean your phones, clean that every day. Every time you come into the department, someone needs to do a 360 clean, wipe out every surface, every phone, every computer screen, every keyboard. It was really about just practicing good healthcare, right? Good cleanliness. That was our communication. But we still tried to do it for us because the world was kind of going a little crazy. We wanted to keep the message grounded. So we did it with humor. So what you see here is literally my medical director. And we had so much fun. We got our faculty involved, we got our teams involved, we have the ultrasound team. doing a video about how to put your PPE on, how to clean your phones, and we sent them out. We actually challenged the teams. Talk about morale post-COVID or during a crisis. We tried to give the message, make it palatable, just like you do at a margarita. You make it palatable. So we made the message palatable. Whatever's happening out there, let's just ground ourselves in what's real here. And it was about keeping ourselves safe. Now, peak COVID was completely different. From March 12th to March 13th, we went from, okay, maybe we should have a meeting. What if, okay, things are real. Now we're getting messages to start closing our doors. So what happened here, we're gonna pick up right here. 313, the first Texan dies of COVID. Number 312 is when things were starting to get real for us. Now our first Texan has died. 314, March 14th, that's why I say March is kind of the pivot point for our communication changes. It's when the shutdowns begin. But not just any shutdown. March 23rd, Governor Abbott halts elective surgeries. Now, before I go on to the next slide, I want to tell you what was happening during this time. So when I was calling peak COVID, I'm calling it between, not saying that is the peak, I'm talking about communication. We went from March 12th to March 23. Nobody knows what's going on. Literally, it's 14 days. Oh, no, I have it up here. 14 days. We went from things are getting real. Now you're shutting down my rodeo to when Governor Abbott says elective surgeries are going to be canceled. That is not a lot of time to pivot. It really isn't. And when you're the leader trying to give a message, especially when the message is as crazy and cryptic as I'm going to show you in a second, someone's going to have to be decisive, and it's going to have to be us, one way or another. I want to show you how our communication immediately changed. So first of all, what I noticed, and remember I told you that I was military, and what I observed standing on the X, and I was watching what was happening, and to be honest with you, everyone was watch, wait, and see. Watch, wait, and see. But just looking at the way the dominoes were falling, okay, one fell slowly, then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. Things are happening really, really fast. You have to be faster than what they are. At least come up with a what if game. And I'll be honest with you, at certain times, I didn't feel like I was getting enough information as quickly as I needed it. So if I'm not getting it, you know how my poor team feels? So at some point, you just have to stand your ground and say what you do know and start making a plan. And then if it's in line with where the rest of the information is coming, great. If not, then you'll redirect. So one of the things I noticed was that we needed to expand who we're including. So I have an email distribution group called Radiology Imaging Leadership. And on that group, on my email distribution group, is all of the site administrators for all the campuses, the one person in charge. All of the modality service line leaders. So we have a leader over MRI for the whole system. We have a leader over CT, ultrasound, nuclear medicine, X-ray, the clinic, nuclear, I guess the nuclear medicine, sorry, medication head. So we normally be them, and this year we actually expanded, and we even got the lead tech of all the system, all 6 hospitals. That's my email group, Radiology Imaging Leadership. And we do our own huddles, and we do our meetings, and those are my people. But this was unprecedented. And so I expanded it. And I started putting all the faculty, the radiologists on it. I put the residents on it. I put the fellows. I didn't put the academic leader, my counterpart. The way our system's divided, we have the hospital side, they call it HD, it's all the operations, and then AE, academic enterprise. But radiology needs to stay close. And we can't function without the radiologists can't function without us. So we need to be on the same message. Military leader, like I said. So I said, nope, didn't ask permission, I just did it. At some point, I'll say sorry if someone else had a plan, but I didn't see anyone stepping up, so someone had to step up. You know what, I'm gonna have my leadership meeting without you. Anyways, if you want to join, join, if you don't. So guess what, they joined. We had 2-day meetings, 8 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the afternoon. I don't know anything right now. I don't know anything, but at least they know I don't know anything at 8 o'clock. 4:30, this is the new news. Every day for 14 days. And guess what? Those residents were on the call. The fellows were on the call. The doctors were on the call. They were asking questions I hadn't even thought of. We were actually at one point, because of these huddle calls and because of the way they were asking really great questions about the uptake in CTs. Are we seeing an uptake in CTs? Do we have COVID CT protocol? I was thinking about operations, doors open, doors closed, right? They were thinking science. They were thinking medicine. And had we not partnered together during that critical 14-day time, we may have lost a research opportunity, right? The information that we would share during this, it was hodgepodge. We had a system, incident command. And if we got information from them, now obviously that's what we would share. We talked about things that they needed about working from remote. Let me tell you, nothing brings innovation more than a pandemic. People who were told no matter what, you cannot do what you do from home, they were doing from home the very next day, right? Amazing what you could do. Kurt Busch, I'm just teeing it up for you tomorrow, okay? We talked about volumes, when we were shutting down, what we're shutting down, how we're going to shut down. A lot of information was coming from the doctors, and I was so proud that they were engaged at that level, but because they were just as lost as we are. But someone has to be the point of information, and if we're one big system, we need to be going in the same direction. And the reason I say this, oh, go to the next slide, sorry. So in preparation, we'll talk about morale and communication. I actually did some actual research too, not just things from UTMB. I looked up and looked at Harvard Business Review, some HR resources, and what did they say? What was happening in the rest of the world? My world was caving in, right? Harvard says they did a meta research on military disaster leadership, and they were talking about communications and how to sustain morale. And they said during this time, communicate to inspire, to be decisive, and lead with confidence. Well, it's hard to be confident when even the leaders don't know what we're dealing with yet. HR resources were saying to be careful what you communicate, though. Be careful. Communicate properly. And then instead of creative leadership, just try to reduce your loss by keeping things going. Now, this is where I was trying to get to. So when even your governor comes out and says, okay, these are the rules. Finally, we have guidance. But this is the rule he gives us. Every hospital that is licensed under Chapter 241 of Texas Health and Safety Code and is also located in an area with high hospitalization, as defined below, shall postpone all surgeries and procedures that are not medically necessary to diagnose or correct a serious medical condition or to preserve life of a patient. I'm going to stop there for a second. I highlight there because this is literally from the governor's notice regarding the shutdown. And he gave hospitals so many outs already. Really? Think about it. That is if the hospital was willing or needing to take the risks that they could. First of all, the word medically necessary. Medically necessary. He's not going to argue with the doctor, right? Medically necessary. First out. Then, define what a procedure is. Is a CT of the head a procedure or a test? Is a procedure something that involves a physician presence? And then, goes further, as determined by the patient's physician, provided, however, clause, that this prohibition shall not apply to any surgery or procedure that, if performed in accordance with a commonly acceptable standard of clinical practice, would not deplete any hospital's capacity needed to cope with COVID-19. So first of all, he starts up here saying some rules. And we're thinking, finally, someone's telling us what we can do and what we can't do. Okay, you can't do tests, you can't do surgeries. Can't do surgeries or procedures unless they're medically necessary. Okay, well, not the same as medically necessary, right? But you can do those procedures, Botox, cosmetic surgery, whatever, if it doesn't deplete a hospital's capacity to cope with COVID-19. I mean, so it's like a catch-22. I mean, and the thing is, we're talking a couple of meetings earlier about several hospitals are still very much shut down, very much shut down. And it's like, why? Well, every state was left to kind of fend for their own and make their own rules. And depending on how your hospital adopted those rules or educated you or informed you or provided you guidance, they probably gave you some kind of out too. Because what? Because there's lawyers involved. Just saying. So we're talking about communication, about making it palatable, even when the communication that we're getting may not be very clear. So there's a saying, was it, I can apologize, what's the saying, apologize after? Something like that. So make a stand. It comes down to, well, one way or another, you're gonna have to make a stand. That's what we did at UTMB. When we're talking about morale post-COVID, we just started having our 2-a-days. We started making decisions. We made a decision for what if. Our leadership told us the same exact verbiage, the same exact verbiage. So working with our doctors, our radiologists, which made them feel amazing to be a part of the decision instead of being told what the decisions are, they actually came up with some brilliant ideas. So when we were shutting down, we went through our cues, and several of every section took their body parts. So neuro took all the neuros in the queue, body took all the body orders in the queue, MSK took all the MSKs in the queue, and you tell me what is, this is what my brilliant idea was. You tell me what's medically necessary and what's not, right? Ah, and she's a savior. Guess what? They told me, no, I'm a radiologist. I sit behind the desk. They're ordering doctors to tell you what's medically necessary, not me. So that's what we had to do. So then what we did, we actually, working with Epic and IT, we actually, for all new orders, we built in order questions because of the feedback that we were getting from the front line. Is this medically necessary during COVID, or can it wait? And if they said, yes, it can wait, we put it in the queue and banked it for later. If they said medically necessary, we scheduled it. But that's the kind of communication when you're dealing with a crisis like that, and you're literally walking in the blind. What do? You feel for the walls, right? So our communication was the walls that we were feeling, and we're feeling up against the radiologist. How do you feel? And the frontline staff, how do you feel? Administration, how do you feel? You know, how do you feel about this? And they kept us in check, and we were able to manage through that. So that's why I say that when we're talking about morale post-COVID, the tequila in margarita is communication for us in morale, because it makes it palatable. The second part of the margarita is Cointreau. Now, why Cointreau? Because morale needs a catalyst. So a little research on Cointreau. Back to the story about Margaritas Saints, Sames. This is a picture of Margarita, and she just looks like a Dallas socialite, doesn't she? Sitting on the beach or in a pool with her palm trees behind her, probably a margarita in her hand. Cointreau acts as a flavor catalyst when mixed with a cocktail and has a proven sensory impact. So if we all order a margarita after this, or I'm gonna be very upset. First drink for me for margarita. Actually, Cointreau is a type of triple sec. It's strong, number one. It's strong, it's sweet, it's colorless, and has an orange flavor. So why do you need a catalyst during a crisis? To boost morale. And what could a catalyst be to boost morale during a crisis? Well, if you ask HR, it's about being flexible. If you ask Harvard Review, it's about being agile. Also about moving leaders and tasks rapidly. So what was our catalyst at UTMB for morale? And we're still doing several of these today. Distract. We don't know what's happening right here. You know, we have a crisis. We're dealing with a crisis. But mentally, emotionally, you need to focus on something 1 foot forward. You can't stand still. The 1900 storm, it couldn't stand still. Hurricane Ike, you could not stand still. You have to move forward. So we had to create a forward momentum of something positive when everything was shutting down around us. So what we did was this. First of all, we created labor pools, and I'll go into labor pools here in a second in more detail. But labor pools in essence was, you can't do your job, mammography here, but you know what? I need you manning a COVID tent front, just taking temperature checks. I need that. Please help us. Be a part of the solution here. Some of the bigger projects we came out with were really, what we did is we went to the team and we asked them, what are those things that you would really love to fix, but you've never had time to do it? It's really messed up. This is a perfect time. Let's do it now. Our CT manager said, we need CT standardization across the system. And we didn't have the software to do it, you know, from a desk. So it really would take someone going CT scanner to CT scanner to CT scanner, and we would never have time. Think about it. We had a brakes pause on it. That was the perfect time. He raised his hand and said, Angie, I'd love to do CT standardization and go fix all our protocols at all of our hospital sites. Cody, go for it. And he did it. And you know how much joy he had in doing that work? He was excited. Every site he went to while he was doing it, thank you for fixing it. Can you answer this problem for me too? I've always had a problem with this protocol. He had 2 months, literally 2 months of going scanner to scanner, and he brought joy from it. Big case, payment analysis, phase orders of pipelines. So one of the questions that I'm sure you get asked the same thing. So, do we really make money on this case? And if so, are we really getting paid for it? So one of those questions that unless if the world was to stop, I can't sit there and just do analysis of case after case and find out, okay, Medicare, you get this much money. No, private payers, you get this much, or maybe you lose it. Or this doctor, the way he's charting, gets this much money. Dr. B, the way he's charting, doesn't. Those are things that we would never have a chance to do. The IR manager took that case on. And guess what? He found out he could answer people's questions. I can tell you the way Dr. So-and-so's charting, because he uses these 3 words, he gets $1,500 more. That was value. Not only was he valued for the work he did, the doctors learned something, the system gains and moves forward from it. We're going to talk about cross-training. We also went into, finally, let's just update all our policies. Who has time to sit there and just print everything off, get them updated in the new format, get them signed, and get them uploaded again? We call it busy work, but this was needed work. It was needed work. And then breast imaging, I won't even go there. We found out in breast imaging, we had to completely blow up everything about how we scheduled, how we navigated patients, how we put patients on the MRI schedule. Just as an example, and I know you can't see this here. So who has Epic here? Okay. So what's interesting, and I wasn't an expert in breast imaging by any means, but when you have a crisis, you start digging under things you can. One of the things I noticed in breast imaging, the way our template was built, and if you want to see this later, I'm telling you, I know a lot about breast imaging scheduling now. It used to be just open 8 to 5, 15-minute slots, whatever you need, just throw it on. So you can do a screening, you can go to a diagnostic, give you a 30 minutes, you can go to a biopsy. One room could just be all over the place. And our wait, I do know this, our wait times were out of the roof at that time, the way that was built. Our patient satisfaction wasn't great, it wasn't bad, it's breast imaging. I mean, they normally are happy patients and we have great teams, but that wait time was horrible. We decided, because we had to literally shut that down completely, let's redo it. So we ended up working with Epic and we created blocks. So a screening, that only screenings can be done during certain times. When a radiologist wasn't available, it's a perfect time to do it, right? And only diagnostics could be done, so we could actually manage our schedule. The team was so excited. Here we are, the world's falling apart, but when it comes back up, when the lights come back on, now they have a new pretty schedule, and they can have dedicated screening days where only screenings can be done. And you have to understand that anybody in the system can schedule mammography, not just my schedulers. So when you have that many hands in the pot, unless you have hard stops, it's really impossible to manage it. The doctors were happy because we can actually now quantify, what we call the procedures, anything involves physician. And then we actually ended up redoing, and this is just one of 5 different workflow diagrams that we did for the navigation process. The navigator, oh God bless her. I stood on the X with her and watched what she had to do for every single, VIRAS 1, VIRAS 2, VIRAS 3, VIRAS 4, and how crazy it was, and the tools that she was working with, where she was copying from a Word document and pasting it into Epic because she had to get the words perfectly. But if we could just make the tools better. So again, during COVID, post-COVID, when the lights came back on, she had a pretty nice navigation workflow to work off of. So the 2 things I really wanted to focus on, though, were the labor pools and the cross-training. So labor pools. So we didn't have to have mammography as much during COVID. We didn't have a lot of schedulers during COVID. And being the leaders that we are, of course that hits us hard. We know that our teams need their paycheck just like we need ours, right? But we also can't afford to just sit there and nothing to do. So we did find out and recognize that we needed labor pools. We needed people to man temperature checks to walk in the building. We were doing so many COVID tests that even the electronic tube system to go take things from the ER to the lab wasn't keeping up. So we actually had physical runners. And we had dedicated units that were converted to COVID units, where you had to have someone temperature check you before you went in, someone to temperature check you before you went out. All of this is physical people. So what we did is we found people who needed a job, needed hours. Maybe you couldn't do memo, maybe you couldn't do scheduling, but if you could sit in this chair and take a temperature and go ask them 5 questions, I'll pay you. I'll pay you your own salary. You won't even take a pay cut. But you might have to go to another campus, you might have to go to a shift. But when it comes to putting bread on the table, I'm in. So we created those. And the attitude went from this is not my job to what's your life assurance scope? We had RTs working at MAs, taking blood pressures on the unit. We went, now the first time that we did this, we bit off more than we could chew. The system as a whole wanted to do this great big organized fashion. I'm going to make a web-based form, and everyone's going to self-register on this web-based form and tell me what their licensure is and what campus they would prefer to work at and what shift they would prefer to work. It was mass chaos because someone had to register all that, right? Again, I'm military. It's just getting done. So I called the smallest hospital in the system, Angleton Danbury, because I know they need help because they're out 50 miles out. Hey, Chad, you need some shifts? Yeah? What shifts you need? How many? All right, I'll cover them for you. Just give me Angleton and I will get my imaging people there. And they had jobs. They had paychecks coming. And that was my goal in that. And it wasn't a small ask. Angleton Danbury is right out here, 50 miles out. But when you're in a crisis, and like I said, you need bread on the table, you need a roof over your head, you need electricity, especially during storms. Take the hours. You're not getting a pay cut. And they did it. They did it with a smile on their face. They manned the front desk. They manned these entrances that they had outside the ERs. They usually stood behind all the signs, taking your temperature before you walked in the building. Those were rad techs. Those were CT techs. They were MR techs. They were whatever they needed. They had a job. To talk about morale during COVID, when other hospitals were laying off, I said, thank you, God. We had something for them to do, and we needed them. The really big kicker, I mean, we did all these projects. That was awesome, great. Life came back on. We had shiny new toys to play with. But this one is the one that the gift that keeps giving. And I really hope that you pay attention to these next couple of slides. Because this was a sell. If I could sell this to my administration, I promise you, you can too. And it changes the way your employees see you. Talk about morale post-COVID. You are part of their future, not just their today. So, I've said it several times. You kind of see when the dominoes start to fall. 1 domino, 2 dominoes, and all of a sudden, you have to jump in front of them to stop the cascade. So when I saw the dominoes starting to fall, the first thing in my head, there's going to be, if there's not going to be a reduction of force, there's going to be at least a freeze. I was already neck deep in needing MRI techs and CT techs. I was already drowning. I could not afford a freeze. So during those 3 months, for me, it came out to be 3 months of shutdown. Pre-COVID, we were already short MRI staffing. Our CT demand, because of COVID, was going up. A lot of CT was being done. When we were starting to ramp back out of COVID, about 3 months later, we actually went in what we called an 8 in 8. Everybody had to give up 8 days of labor. In other words, take eight time off days. In 8 weeks. I'm sorry.
So they had to take 8 days off over 8 weeks? Did they do this consecutively? Thumbs up was doing it too.
Yes, is the answer. Most shows not usually, yes.
Were they allowed to use PTO? Good deal.
Thank you. I love you for it. So, what we did, we took 5 people.
You should be cut this short.
Thank you, Kurt, you're so generous. Sorry, guys. But we did. We cross-trained teaching them on. We paid them their salary. I'm a rep, so go faster. So I held information sessions. I said, guys, I'm going to cross-train 5 people. I'm going to pay you your salary for the next 3 months. You're not going to do double duty. I'm going to pull you out from where you're at. And I'm going to teach you and go down. We made it open. We had some rules. We had to be benefit employee. It wasn't going to do it for part-time PDLs, which is our labor pool. An amazing showing. So here's the financials on it. The average salary of the candidates that we selected, they had about $42,000 a year before they went to the training program. Each of them, they get their certification. And they jumped up after their certification to 54. Guys, talk about morale. Everyone's losing their jobs. They're afraid they're not going to have much more. UTMB was training them how to make more money when they came out. Just for FYI, everyone's talking about staffing and how we can't find staffing right now because they're all doing traveling. Well, guess what? Those traveling companies, UTMB has to pay $189 an hour for traveler to come in. So I'm just basic math. 3 months of training, about $11,000 each. I invested $11,000 into someone. In return, this is my ask. I looked at, and I did each and every one of these interviews myself with the panel. I said, this is what I'm asking of you. And I'm just telling you the fact. I gave up 6 years of my life to the U.S. Air Force to learn the field of radiology, and I believe that I loved it so much. This is what I want to do for my life. I'll ask you, I will pay you your salary, $11,000. All I want to do is 1 year flexibility. I'm not saying I'm going to throw you the worst shifts all the time. If I need you to go to Angleton Danbury for a weekend, go to Angleton Danbury for a weekend. If I need to work a holiday at Clear Lake, go work the holiday at Clear Lake. That's all I'm asking. And why? Because we had to get in front of the dominoes that were falling. They're falling so fast, we had to jump in front of them. And we did. We knocked them down. We trained 5 people, all 5 of them. Well, actually, we started off with 6. One didn't make the program, but the other 5 did. They finished it. They got their registry. They got the bumping pay. And they did everything I asked them to do. Guys, think about it. I had 5 people who were willing. Pick up a phone call. Hey, can you go fill this shift? It's an X-ray shift. It's a CT shift. It's an MR shift. Can you fill this shift somewhere in your scope? Another hospital. They didn't give me a fight. Oh, yes, Angie, I'm going to do that one. Okay, I got it. No, I got this one. They're still doing that today. They text each other because even though they've all got permanent jobs, they move around the system. So we created, in essence, a willing labor pool. So, yeah.
On that, did you have them not only ask for flexibility for you, but you invest in them? Did they have to stay a year, for example?
Actually, per HR, I could not demand them. I could not, and honestly, there's nothing legally I could do. So, but the thing is, you need to create a willing want in someone. And so if they left, and I told them, I can't force you to do it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to, but I would hope through the multiple panel interviews, and they have to go through get this, much like they already have a reputation in the department, that we knew who we were investing in. But guys, I would have had to pay, so if you think about morale, talking about morale here, post-COVID, we demonstrated to these, not just talking, we walked the walk, that UTMB was willing to promote from within. We created a career ladder for them that they may not have been able to participate in. This was our catalyst for employee morale. And then, talk about payback. We got 12 months of flexibility. That MRI tech, we did 3 CT and 1 MR. that MRI tech, because of that person, after COVID, we were able to go from 8-hour day operations to 12-hour day operations. Now, that's my catalyst. That 12-hour day operation right there, we get a net of 600. That's 12, I got medication in. 4, 12, 24, 2,400 a day net, just by adding on 4 more MRIs a day. I mean, really, we're talking about 11,000 per person, right? If the math makes sense. So that was our catalyst for morale. Now, that was what we did. And that was our first cohort. We're actually starting our second cohort. Here we are. Let's go. We're doing 2 MRI techs now. And we'll bring the CT techs a month later. What we did was we took this. I mean, if we're talking about margaritas, we're talking about hurricanes, talking about hurricane parties. That you can't have a margarita alone. You got to share it, right? So we took what we did on catalyst and imaging, and we shared it with the ambulatory group. And we said, you know what? We have another problem that we can use this at. So, don't shoot me. Say, don't shoot me, guys. But you know, there are different levels of radiology tech. There's a non-certified tech that's like 2 weeks training at that. Then there's a limited medical LMRT, right, about a year. And then there's RT for 2 years and dispatchers, so forth. So we have a lot of urgent cares, and they take a handful of x-rays all day long. So we were staffing it with RTs, Either they were sitting there all day long, an RT on RT salary, taking 5 x-rays all day long, or they were on call and they were going back and forth. So one of my managers said, can we do this for this? Now, we had tried several different ways to try to staff the clinics, the urgent cares, but it wasn't working out. When BRG came in about 4 years ago, we did the math on it. On these 6 clinics alone, we lost revenue over profits. We lost $49,000 a year the way we were staffing our clinics. We lost with RTs. And $620,000 we were spending a year just in salaries for RT with all overtime. And it was always the highest paid x-ray tech that would volunteer to do the call, right? Well, of course, I'll go do chest x-ray. The staffing model was sporadic, a lot of call, only covering part of the day, not all of the day, or no coverage at all. And the goal was, is there any way for us to staff this doors open to stores closed for these urgent cares? I'm not going to go through that at all. But we said, yes, if we could get a LMRT, because all they did was chest x-rays, abdomens, hands, and feet, pretty much. That's all they did. But they really needed the MA. So why don't is there a way to do LMRTs just in the urgent cares? Not promoting them everywhere, but in the urgent cares that makes sense. They need more of an MA than an x-ray tech. Well, I showed you the map of where Galveston is, right? We're way down south of Texas. There's no schools for that down there. We tried, we put a posting for LMRTs, no one would apply because all the schools were in North Houston. I even went as far of going to the colleges and asked, hey, can you take that RT? That RT was working at Jack in the Box or McDonald's for the 2 years while he's in school. Why don't you give him the other credentials he needs so he can be an LMRT after year 1, and he can work for me as an LMRT while he's doing his RT school for year 2. I thought that was a perfect plan. School didn't want to do it. Not at the time. But we kept going back and going back and going back. COVID gave us the opportunity, and I did the math on it. Working with a school, MTMI, CHCP, I said, what if you take one of my MAs that are already employed with the University of Texas Medical Branch, and my x-ray techs will be their didactic teacher for x-ray. They'll do their clinicals at my site, but you teach them didactics for x-ray. What would that cost me? They said $5,000 a person. So what? It's a tier thing. So this program would allow UTMB we would follow the graduate nurse program, so it's something that was precedented already. The students would complete their MA to LMRT, we call it the bridge program. And then our key performance indicators, because of course the big wigs want to know, hey, let's give me my KPI, let's give me my return on investment here. Our KPI would be to decrease the operational expenses by site, on a different slide, from the baseline run rate of right now, we were spending $620,000 a year in salary. So we wanted to decrease that. We put the expenses together. So we would pay the average temp MA salary was about 23. We would pay for, as an institution, UTMB would pay for the background check. We would pay for all their LMRT exams. We would pay for the students, about $5,000 each. And then we came up with this reverse engineered MA to LMRT bridge to SAP. So we took what we learned, that catalyst of morale that we did in radiology, take RT teach them MRI, teach them CT, give them a career path. Some people look forward to at the end of the tunnel when the lights come back on after COVID. We did the same for the MAs. We had, no lie, about 72 people on our Zoom call interested in this program the first time we did it. 72 people. We only took 5. We only took 5 this first one. It got noticed because it was the first of its kind. We're a public school. We, working with CHP and NTMI, launched this program to grow LMRTs in the area. So Margarita, we started with our communications, make it palatable. We needed a morale catalyst. We needed something innovative, and we found it. We found it from the voices of our staff. The third part is celebrating the wins. And I gotta be careful with this one, because you can't just celebrate just to say, oh, you showed up today. You showed up today. No, I don't working double. It has to be sincere celebrations. You can't fake this part. This is so important. You cannot fake this part, because have you ever heard of this phytophotodermatitis? Okay, we're talking about the line now, Margarita. This is very important. This is lime juice is very important. Phytophotodermatitis. I think a smart person here, Mr. Bush. Be nice to me.
I think you know that.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. We'll see. Phytophotodermatitis. This is actually something you don't want. It's actually from lime. It's about citrus. You put citrus on the skin out in the sun. It actually starts to look like a sunburn, but it's not. It's phytophotodermatitis. And I thought it was funny because we're talking about lime juice and lime. So I say celebrate with sincerity. No one wants a fake suntan. All right, so celebrating the wins with sincerity. So we also celebrate the wins when we could, when we got them. You have to. And it doesn't have to be big wins. It really doesn't. So what we did was did y'all have virtual happy hours at your place? Come on. Not one? Not one? Thank you. Thank you. My team was the craziest person. I did a virtual happy hour. It was so fun. Everyone had it on their phones. We all decided to get on a Zoom call, and it was the first time I could see some of their houses. I mean, think about it. Hey, you look, this is my fishing pole. Oh, I caught something. I could be on my deck fishing while someone else is in their backyard and listen to some music with their feet propped up. I mean, we were all in our comfort zones. It was after work one day. We just decided, let's try it. At the first one we did was just the leadership team, my team. The second one, that the faculty heard about it. They was like, why wasn't I invited? They were upset that they weren't invited. So I said, okay, you're invited. So we did the second one. And then we had faculty showing us their pools and their little puppies. And it was frivolous. At the time, I thought it was frivolous, but now looking back, it was needed. We needed those breaks just to have fun. We celebrated every time we had our department meetings post-COVID. I still go back. I know this is where'd my fart go? I know everyone's thinking, oh, we're past COVID, but we're not past COVID, right? So I still go back to my meetings and I remind everyone, guys, we did not have a single staff cut. Do you know how blessed we are with that? And we need to kind of shove it in everyone's face. Remember, this is something you should be happy about. Guys, you know that we got so many new people who are more registered. We have more registries now in our system. Guess what? I reminded them that when I was doing the interviews for the second cohort. We're about to do a second cohort. And this came out of the pain that we went through during the first cohort, right? So we had to bring it back, make it real. We talked about the labor pools. We did their virtual birthdays. And then I also go back and I remind everyone about all these other projects that we did. You realize that a year ago, our templates were so messed up. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh, I remember that. I remember that patients would wait for an hour for a screening mammogram. because there's a biopsy before it. And it was just, the template would allow for patients to be scheduled that way. I'm showing you a picture of here, because this is probably my biggest tool in my arsenal today. And yes, everyone tries to get me to change it, but I'm not going to change. Why? Because I'm edgy. All right. This is called Crew, and this is an app. So one of the things that, with your text messaging, you have a limit. You have a limit of how many people you can put on a text message, right? And I reached my limit with my leadership team, just with the leadership team. So when I was looking, of course, we had no money for anything, right? I was state hospital. So I was looking for a free app, and this is an app called Crew. And I had all my leadership team get on it. So this way I'd never forget somebody. And I'm scrolling through, what I'm showing you right here is I'm literally scrolling through just crew message after crew message after crew message. They have loved this so much that they have made a crew team for their individual hospitals. So League City, Saba has her own crew team, so she can talk to her team. Julie has her crew team with all her CT techs across the system. And what I like about this, and you guys think this is all just talk for a presentation. This is the kind of messages that my team sends me. When I told them, hey guys, I'm about to talk about all the great things you guys did over this last year. I'm really nervous. And they send me these videos. You got it, Angie. You got it. Don't look around. And then when someone's having a hard day, one of my nurses texted this morning and said nothing seems to be going right for her today. What did her team do? I'm not even there. Her team, they backed her up. They supported her. But now they have a mechanism. They have a tool they can do it that's socially acceptable. It's not work if it's on this app, right? And then they do, and they talk with each other about it. But that's what this app is. It's a crew app. I mean, at least it was free when I downloaded it. But I think it's amazing, a way to communicate. And then now post-COVID, the part that keeps on giving. So our communication during this time changes dramatically. It's about how fast can we get back to normal. Well, we're still not normal, are we? But how fast can we get back? So of course, the messaging at this point turns to what was our baseline, what's our timeline, and how are we getting back? So this just shows how our KPIs change. Week after week, we had to measure. Where was our baseline? What was our weekly average pre-COVID? What's our weekly average after? So finishing up, making our margarita, we've got our tequila, which is the communication. We've got our Cointreau, agility and flexibility. We've got our lime juice, celebrating our wins with sincerity. Now we come to the wedge of lime and salt on the rim. Do something that brings you joy. Do something that brings you joy. Brenda mentioned in her last speech, feed your soul. Feed your soul. As leaders, and she said, she actually took the words right out of my mouth, Brenda, if your glass is empty, you have nothing to give. So I encourage that. Encourage that. I have to say this, one of the things that my boss did very, very well is for me during COVID. He knows that my favorite spot is to be on my kayak. I love to be on my kayak. I am the hard-head queen of Galveston, guys. I'm just telling you, doesn't matter what time of the year, what bait I'm using, I'm always going to catch a hard head. Those are not edible fish. That's not a good thing. But I like being on it. So do something that brings you joy and then rest. So that's how you top off your margarita. And I'm going to end with that.